The sport of wrestling is the single greatest influence in my life. I started wrestling when I was 10 years old and I wrestled all the way through to college, and I still coach wrestling today. And today, folks, we have the opportunity to talk to an absolute wrestling legend, Ben Askren. He's won the Hodge Trophy in college wrestling, which is the MVP of college wrestling. He wrestled for the U.S. Olympic team, and he runs the most successful wrestling club in Wisconsin, in which the majority of state champions in the state came from his club. So he's a philosopher, he's a wrestler, all around good guy, and I'm excited to bring this conversation to you today. Ladies and gentlemen, Ben Askren. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here on the Askren compound talking to one of the most influential American wrestlers of all time, and we're happy to have him here in our home state of Wisconsin. But first place I want to start, Mr. Ben Askren, is you just got off a call for your academies, the AWA Wrestling Academies. You're up to seven of them. What type of things do you cover on your calls?
Well, that call specifically was about high school season starts today. Today is November the 13th. And so high school kids who have memberships need to be maybe paused or suspended until after the season because we have an in-season, out-of-season. That was boring stuff today, right?
Okay.
But yeah.
But are you guys talking culture, curriculum,
Correct.
or is that up to each individual school?
No, we try to have a huge influence on the way they teach. We try to let them also have freedom and autonomy to do what they want, but within a certain range. And if there's a certain, and we've had, you know what, so far they've all been great. So we've had no issues where we've been like, this is unacceptable. You can't do this. We haven't ever had to do that, but we obviously may guide them and like, hey, this is the best way to do it. And so far, all of them want to be really good at what they're doing. So they're like really open to advice. And obviously, me, Max, and Josh, who are kind of the three of the earlier coaches, can say, well, we've had this problem. And here's what happened when we had this problem. And here's what we think is the best way to solve it. So, I think it's really good.
I noticed you don't have an academy in Milwaukee.
Yes.
Can you get more into why that is? And if you were to open up academy in Milwaukee, would you have to change the business model? How would that look?
Yeah. So I don't know the answer for sure about business model. Could it generate the revenue to sustain itself? And the answer is, I kind of think the answer is yes to that. A mutual friend of ours, Truman McGee, I thought eventually once he retired from Funky Fresh that maybe me and him could do something together because he's passionate about wrestling coaching. And I kind of viewed him as like he could be like the manager and maybe help out. And then we could also bring in, a high-level Division I wrestler to help him coach the wrestling also. But at the same time, it's like Heartland's 25 minutes this way, not that far. Franklin is short. Franklin's like 15 minutes south. And then Mequon's like 20 minutes north. And so, when you're looking at the distance of wrestling academies to where the people are at, we're not really that far away. And I know... I know one thing for us is we want to make wrestling accessible to everyone. And so our actual goal is to make it 45 minutes to an hour between each academy. So if you look at a map and you start like drawing lines from one, that's kind of the distance we're looking at. Because that would mean someone in the middle is driving a maximum of 30 minutes one way, which is fine. And if you look at academies in other states, there's kids who are driving hour and 15, hour and 20, one direction.
That's a huge load on a family too.
It's a huge load on a family and it's a huge sacrifice. And so we're trying to make it so, and they may do that. I have some kids that come from far away to come to my academy, but they also have the Madison option. They also have the Franklin option. So they have these other choices as well. And so they can get things closer if they want to.
But if we were to open up a wrestling academy, let's say smack dab in the hood of Milwaukee, there's no way these kids are paying $150, $200 a month, most of them.
Well, so what? Yeah, correct. So what I would say to that is that, obviously the rent's going to be lower, right? Which is the main cost. And I do think you could probably attract them nearer suburbs, I guess you would say, as well. And then obviously you might look for some grants or something to that effect. But yeah, I mean, the demand for wrestling right now, and I think it speaks to that we're doing it right, it's crazy because we thought, okay, when we opened Heartland 2011, a bunch of people were like, well, you can't open in Mequon, that's too close, you're going to take all the kids away, right? And now it's like, okay, well, we're packed. So then we open Franklin, like, okay, this will take some of the kids from the south, but we're still sold out. So, okay, let's open Fond du Lac, and maybe that'll take some of the kids from, no, we're still sold out. So it's like, no matter how many we open adjacent to us, and if we're in Heartland, which is the original location, we have Mech 1, Franklin, Fond du Lac, Madison, all within probably 50 minutes is probably the farthest to any of those other locations, and some are closer, and we're still sold out in Heartland. So I think what it's seeing is if you teach the sport of wrestling correctly, kids really want to participate in it, and they want to do something challenging, they want to do something hard. And so, yeah, if you had one in Milwaukee, I think you could attract more. We don't have a ton of Tosa kids. We don't
Shorewood, Whitefish Bay.
West Allis, we don't have a ton of those kids.
You said teach it correctly. Where do most academies or coaches go wrong?
Well, the most simple thing I can describe to you is that there's this just really, really simple principle. If I just keep the kids showing up over a long enough period of time, they're going to get good. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, listen, are they going to be world champions? I don't know. But, we're talking, if they just keep showing up, they're probably going to be, on the low end, state qualifiers, but, state placers, state champions, going to college. Because they also, at some point when they've invested a certain amount of time, they get pretty passionate about it and they want to do it. Whereas I think there's so many idiot wrestling coaches who, within the first year, they want the kid to be able to withstand a really, really hard training regimen, and they want them to be really, really good. And we understand it's not going to happen in a year. And I don't need it to happen in a year. And I know making it happen within a year is going to be counterproductive. Now, if I take 20 kids, and this would be their counter argument, which is bad, by the way, but the counter argument is, well, if I took 20 kids, there's probably one of those kids, or a couple, maybe a couple, who will be really tough. They'll really enjoy the tough training, and therefore they'll get really good. And so out of those 20, they keep maybe 5, 2 of them get really good, and they think their recipe is good. But we're at AWA, we'll keep 17 of those kids, right? And then, very few of them will probably get really good right away. But then the next year we'll have 15 of them, and all of a sudden 3 or 4 or 5 of them are getting really good. And then a year later we'll have 13 of them, and now 6 or 7 will be really good. And so, one of my high school kids, actually, he just made this recognition? That's definitely not a word. What's the word I'm looking for here?
A realization, epiphany moment?
Realization, epiphany. He recognized, I guess I could have said, we were at the AWA duels a few months back, and he came up to me, he was a high school senior, he's like, dude, it has to be so frustrating for these other clubs because they see you graduate all these kids, and then they think, okay, after these kids graduate, then we're going to beat AWA. And he said, but then look at these kids who weren't any good last year, and now they're competing with the other club's best kids. And last year they weren't any good. He realized, that's our process, is that we are creating a system so which kids stick around, and if they stick around, they're likely to get better over time. Some of them are then going to get very passionate, and then they're going to get really good. And so it's just you're creating a system where you're getting the most out of what you start with.
Is it a little bit of almost comparing the Penn State philosophy and the Iowa philosophy, where one of them is more focused on fun and development and skills, and the others kind of focus on grinding kids out? And it works for Iowa because those kids are already vetted and tough, and they've been through the ringer.
Correct.
They know what to expect. But at a kid's level, the Penn State model is a lot more effective.
Yeah, I got a lot of heat for saying I thought Dan Gable actually did some disservice to wrestling because, it's like when it brought, it's not his fault. Not his fault. People get mad at me for saying this, but he made so many youth coaches across America think they could do it Iowa style. And it's Iowa style is not good for a beginner. It will make them quit. And if our goal is to keep them around, and everyone talks about what's good for the sport of wrestling, and what's good for the sport of wrestling is 5 times as many people wrestling, right? That's what's good for wrestling is all of a sudden, because when you wrestle, almost de facto, you become a fan of the sport, right? And so if we had, instead of, 250,000 people wrestling in high school, if we had 750,000, there would be more wrestling fans. So what's good for wrestling is more people participating, and what's good to keep more people participating is to, I would say, I don't know if fun is the right word exactly, but, make it an enjoyable experience. Don't grind them right away and tell them, if they're, oh, you're not tough enough for this, you're just not made for wrestling. That's what a lot of coaches say. It's dude, they're okay, they're 8. They've never done anything tough in their whole life, and you expect them the first time to do something really, really hard, and that's just not the case.
So almost like a pot of water, you want to slowly raise it to a boil.
100%. And then by the time it gets hot, they love it hot.
And also,
my wife came into the academy yesterday. We had the high school practice was packed. I don't know, we had 50 kids in there or whatever, right? And they're all working hard, so it's kind of hot, you know. And actually, we don't have the AC on because and we're actually the only academy with AC, so we're kind of spoiled. But we didn't have the AC on. It was, we're in the fall, and it's hot and stinky because the kids are working hard. And
Right.
she's like, I gotta open some doors. And she starts opening the doors, and the kids are like, close the damn doors, lady. Like, we like it hot. We want to grind. So, by the time they get to that point, it's not like, oh my God, this is hot, but I can withstand it because I've got tougher. It's like, oh my God, it's hot. Good. That's what I want.
so toughness is a kind of a muscle, and you have to exercise into it. You can't.
Absolutely.
You're not going to become an Olympic champ overnight. What percentage of your kids were the state placers of Wisconsin last year, or state champs? I saw some sort of absurd
Probably
statistic.
over 50, I would guess, especially Division I, because that's where the majority of our academies are in the higher population-based areas. We are, although going into the Division II and Division III means you're like less population dense.
Yeah.
And that's not where we're at yet. In Division I, it would be way over half, I'm sure. I don't know what the exact number is offhand. I think we had 12 of the 14 champs last year, I believe.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and way over half the placers.
And that's 12 years in the making of the AWA dynasty.
Yeah, I think we got 13 2 years ago, so we got really close. We're trying to nail it. It's hard to get every single really, really good kid, but we're getting close. So hopefully one of these years, we'll get 14 out of 14.
I mean, it almost sounds like a wrestling monopoly. I'm gonna have to talk to the state trade commission and get you guys in trouble or something.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously other clubs that exist, but now it's actually been really funny because it's really been within the last 6 months. And to your point, we've been around for 12 years, but all these good kids are just showing up. Like a lot of them we aren't even recruiting. And it's like, I think it's almost like a black hole that's just sucking everything in at this
You have
point.
a lot of gravity.
Because everyone realizes, like, well, okay, but that kid wasn't very good, and now he is good. So if that can happen, then what if I go there? Well, I'm going to jump levels, right? So they realize that jumping level process happens for a reason.
If you had condensed it down to a brief summary or a paragraph, like what is it about the AWA style or culture that produces so many champions?
Well, in the beginning, like I said, is keep a lot of them around, first of all, right? We don't make a lot of our retention rate is incredibly high because we make it an enjoyable experience and we care about every kid that comes in.
Do you
right?
know what youth wrestling retention rates are generally?
I think the year over year for USA Wrestling was like 60%.
Wow.
So that's pretty low.
Do you know how it compares to other sports?
I don't know the answer to that, no.
But it's got to be close to the top.
You'd be close to the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would eventually, obviously, as kids get older, more and more kids, especially in 2023, are specializing into specific events because that's what you have to do to be really successful. But I would say, wrestling's not good because if you start doing the math on 60% times 60% times 60%, it gets to be a really low number kind of fast.
Mm-hmm.
So ours are way higher. So that would be the first secret. And then the second secret, I think, would be the technical mix of like helping them progress from a technical perspective. And there's still a lot of wrestling coaches who focus way too much on the toughness aspect. But it's like, what I always say, like, well, once you get to a certain level of toughness, and I'll ask you about this, Tommy, you would consider yourself to be tough. If I put you through the most rigorous toughness training known to man, I'll give you David Goggins or something.
Holy shit.
How much better at wrestling are you going to get?
Not much. I think I have a little bit of a mental edge before I step on the mat. Like, this kid hasn't done what I've done. I deserve to win.
Maybe a little bit, right? That's a little bit.
But not technical.
But not technical. And like, if I say you're pretty strong already, if I put you through a huge strength regimen, how much better you can get? And the answer would be a little bit, right? But from a technical standpoint, that's where people can really grow, right? If you go from a technical standpoint, okay, you can't finish a single leg. Let's figure that out. Okay, cool. You can't get off bottom. Let's figure that out. Okay, you struggle with leg riding. Let's figure that out. And so you kind of just take it piece by piece by piece. And then when the kids like it and they just keep showing up, you have the time to do this. Speaking
of David Goggins, I saw he was just in the Tony Ferguson camp. Yeah. And I had mixed feelings about it because, well, he just absolutely blasted Tony Ferguson. Like, I think he had him do 2 miles of walking lunges. I've done, for a workout before, a mile of walking lunges. I couldn't walk properly for like 3 or 4 days. And he has a month before his actual fight.
How many lunges in a mile of walking lunges?
That's got to be.
Did you count? Or you
about-
just did a mile?
Just did a mile.
I
I mean, it's
would've-
got to be about 1,000 or 1,500. 3
Well,
feet a step, 4 feet a step.
Yeah. 'Cause that'd be like, somewhere around there.
But I wonder if that, like, especially with how old Tony Ferguson is, how much he's already pushed his body to the limit. He's already tough? That's
what I was. Yeah, yes, the
exact point.
exact argument I would make is, well, what fight has Tony Ferguson lost because he wasn't tough enough? And that's the argument I make. A lot of these, because a lot of the other clubs, they just want to go hard still. And so the simple question I asked the kid is, well, can you give me a match in the last year you've lost because you can't go hard enough? And they're like, no. Well, I can give you 4 matches you lost because your strategy was bad, or I can give you 6 that you lost because you couldn't finish a single leg. So what do you think you need to spend more time doing? Because you didn't lose any because you can't go hard enough. You already got that. So that's what I would think about Tony. Like, name me a Tony Ferguson fight where he lost because he wasn't tough enough. Like, they don't exist. It doesn't happen, So the notion that somehow toughness is going to make him better is maybe flawed.
So, okay, one thing I want to transition to is the question I have in mind is, what are the things that the jiu-jitsu world gets right that the wrestling world gets wrong, and vice versa? What are things that the wrestling world gets right that jiu-jitsu gets wrong?
Oh, that's good. Well, I mean, the biggest one they get right, I would say, and I was whining about this the other day, is that, they have the Who's Number One cards, which was a wrestling event first on Flow, and now it's a jiu-jitsu event. But all of their biggest participants are willing to participate in that, and they get paid really well. Flow Wrestling specifically, has tried to do like professional events multiple times, and guys see the World Championships as more important, and so we haven't been able to transition to a professional avenue for the sport of wrestling, which I think would be hugely impactful.
Do you think there's a market for it?
Yeah, but I think it's watered down because all of the guys, you can't get the best guys to participate in it. So yes, I think like there's a market for the flow grappling to do it. There is, right?
What if we got some Saudi Arabia money? Because that's where the ADCCs go.
Yeah.
They have piles and piles of money.
You would still have to get the best guys to compete in it. And if you can't, then you're not going to have a product, and that's our problem.
You think the Saudis aren't as interested in wrestling, or do you think they would consider a proposal?
I'm thinking the best wrestlers, they view so for American domestic, they view the World Championships as something different, like it's something better, right? And there's very, very few that are worth paying the money to. And then the lower ones who aren't worth the money, they could go make more doing a camp more than they're worth, right? In a wrestling match, which is a really weird, skewed economic view of wrestling. But it's true. It is true.
Wrestling's still like the one sport where it's extremely difficult to make it as a professional.
Correct.
Like there's just no money in it.
Yeah, and so I was saying grapplers make way more. So that would be the one they're doing right. And I don't know the Danaher training program, but obviously it's highly effective because he's producing a whole bunch of the best guys. But and I would guess he's doing like a Penn State, or like I think you should. But the worst thing I think a lot of jiu-jitsu coaches do is they don't do any position-specific grappling or minimal. There's a lot of gyms that'll say, okay, here's 3 or 4 techniques, and then, all right, we're doing 5-minute goes, go. And just do whatever the hell you want for 5 minutes. But if you want to make something good at something, you should be putting them in like position-specific application so you can get better at positions, because if you just let 2 people go, they're likely going to do the things that they're already good at or the things they're already comfortable with, which doesn't actually make them better at the thing.
Have you been able to train overseas at all, like let's say in Dagestan or Russia or anywhere like that?
No, not really. I mean, a couple times, but not really, because my international career was so short. Right? I only wrestled for like a year and 3 months, and then after the 2008 Olympics, I decided to transition to mixed martial arts.
Your bronze medal run was only a 1 year and 3 months of training to get there?
I didn't get a bronze medal. I took 6th place.
Oh.
Yeah.
For some reason, I had you in my head as a bronze medalist.
No, unfortunately, I didn't. Yeah, so I graduated college in March of 2007. I finished my college wrestling career in March 2007. I graduated in May. And there was like a pull to mixed martial arts because I just saw my friends doing it, and I just thought it was something I would enjoy, and I like combat. But Olympics was kind of always my goal, so I said, okay, the Olympic trials is a year and 2 months away. The Olympics is a year and 5 months away, or a year and 4. I'll go do this. So I was able to make the Olympic team in 2008, and then I took sixth place, so I didn't get a medal at the 2008 Olympics. And then after that, it was like, and this is when I was making nothing wrestling, right? Now they actually, like the best Americans actually make like what I would say is a livable wage. I don't think they're getting rich, but they're doing decent for themselves, which is great. But back then I was making nothing. So I said, okay, like, I knew I was going to want to get married relatively soon. I knew at some point after that I was going to have kids, and I said, man, I don't want to have my wife have to experience the poverty life. Like I can do it as a single male, whatever. So I need to do something where I can make more money. And I already had an interest in mixed martial arts, and I thought I could probably be good at this. So after 2008, I said, well, why don't I go try this? And if after, say, a year and a half, I don't like it, if I'm not good at it, if whatever, I'll just come back and wrestle, and I'll have 2.5, 3 years to the Olympics, right, in 2012. Well, I tried it. I liked it. And then within less than a year and a half of my beginning, so my first fight was February of 2000 and
Did you have any amateur fights?
0. I just skipped right to pro. So my first professional fight, which my first fight, was February of 2009. And then by 2000, so I guess it was a year and 8 months, 2010, October 2010, I won the Bellator championship. So a year and 8 months. I fought 3 times in the Bellator tournament in April, May, and June, so just over a year after I started fighting. And I won all 3 of those fights decisively, and I fought for the title, and I won that.
Fighting that many times back to back?
It was awesome. I really wish, like, that's one of the things that I actually don't like about fighting, and I wish there was only 2 times in the rest of my career. That's 2010. So 2010, I fought 4 times. So April, May, June, October. There was only 2 times in the rest of my career where I fought 3 times within a year. So it sucks. It's like, dude, you only get to compete. So I competed twice in 11, twice in 12, twice in 13, twice in 14. 15, I had, 15 was bullshit. I had no contest and something else. I had no actual fights in 15. 16, I had 1. 17, I had 3. 17, I retired. 18, I had none. And then 19, back in the UFC, when I unretired, I had 3 there also.
How do you deal with the anxiety of competing? And is that something that ever you had to work past and get better at? Because I know a lot of what you focus on, particularly on Mondays, mindset Mondays. How do you build the mental aspect of the game? Because sometimes the pressure of just competing can, you know people in the practice room that are amazing in the practice room. When they go out and compete, they just drop the ball. Yeah,
so that's obviously one thing you have to work on with athletes. I had one issue in 1999 where I competed poorly at Fargo, and I had a coach that kind of broke it down for me. And you know what? Never prior to then did I have the issue. And then after that, what he had told me, the advice he told me clicked. What
was the advice?
That if you're thinking too much about what's going to happen, it's going to negatively impact what is going to happen. So if you're like an overthinker, and lots of times there's like these type A personalities who are super active, who are overthinkers, talk to a friend or hang out with someone who's going to make you not think about wrestling. He liked to talk about fishing. I don't like fishing, so whatever. I'll talk about disc golf or jokes or politics or whatever.
Isn't that tough for you? Because like part of your reason for your greatness is that you would, from what I understand, just think about positions constantly.
Yes.
You'd be in class daydreaming about if I got stuck here, I would do this. So how do you balance that out with overthinking?
Okay, so to get back to I'm going to answer your previous question. I'll answer that. So I love to compete, right? If there's one thing I miss from being retired, it's actually like walking into the surface of competition, whether it's wrestling or mixed martial arts. Like that to me is so much fun. But I know I'm not willing to do the work necessary to perform at a high level, so which is why I don't put myself in that space. And so, yes, to your point, if you're going to be good at something, you're frequently going to think about it a lot, obsess over it, which is the opposite of what you need to do when you're competing. I actually have a book coming out about this. It's all the way written. It's called Extreme Balance, and it's the initial version was The Hypocritical Theory of an Elite Athlete's Mind, which that doesn't roll off the tongue at all, so we changed the title.
That didn't sound like a #1 bestseller, the first title.
But it's great because it's hypocritical because you must think this and you must think this, but they're in direct opposition to each other. They apply to what you just said. If you're going to be really great, you want to obsess over something. You want to think about it a lot. You want to figure it out, right? But then at other times, when you're going into competition, you want to be the opposite. Like, you know what you know. You're not going to figure anything out. No, what are you going to figure out in the minute before the competition? I'm not figuring anything out, right? So like you are where you are, accept that, go compete, go bring the heat, right?
The minute before competition, did you have a lot of internal dialogue going on?
No, I mean, literally, I believe so strongly in this that when I was in Asia, I would literally fly. So I had, 3 plane tickets for my coaches. One of my plane tickets would be just one of my buddies who I wanted to bring in that locker room just to hang out, who would just lighten the mood.
And when you reference
You know?
Asia, that's your 1FC
When I was in
fighting.
1FC, yeah, when I was in 1FC. So I would just bring someone who would just lighten the mood because I thought that was such a valuable part of it and something I did so well and something that helped me compete.
Would they come to your corner? They would be in the mat ringside?
Yeah, it was just like and it was like my buddy Rye Stone, who, he was a college wrestler, so, he probably looks like he should be there, but he's like, my buddy and his hang out. He never coached me in mixed martial arts, but, he was someone I could just talk to and hang out with, and I'm going to get warm, and I'm going to hang out, and I'm going to talk, and then when it's time to fight, I'm going to go fight.
Which is tougher, wrestling or MMA?
I mean, obviously, so like, in what sense is what I would say. I think Daniel Cormier just got in trouble for this, but he's right, and people are just. It's way harder to win an Olympic gold medal in wrestling than it is to. He said kickboxing, right? But I'll even say also I'll throw mixed martial arts in there, and the notion of this competition is like, well, how many people are doing that from the age of 5 or 6 or 7 or 8, right? The answer in mixed martial arts, almost none of them. Almost none of them. So someone like Daniel Cormier can start mixed martial arts at the age of 32 and win a world title. You couldn't do that in wrestling.
No.
It's nonsense, So he's not wrong in the fact that it is in fact harder to win a wrestling world title than it is mixed martial arts or kickboxing. And it's strictly about the amount of people participating in that event and how long it takes, because there's been other people who've been training since they were a very young kid to be elite at that.
What about the day-to-day grind of practicing, building up to the competition, which is tougher?
I thought it was the same. And then, right, if you're going to say something that's tough about mixed martial arts is, who the hell was telling me this? Someone who now fights, who previously wrestled, was talking about today. Is like, well, once you fight, they were actually talking about how stressed they got in. Who the hell was it? They were talking about how stressed they got leading up to wrestling competitions. Kind of what what you just brought up a couple questions ago. And then he said, well, now I fight. And so, like, when you fight, there's actually this chance of, like, getting really injured, right? They can kick your head off or choke you or break your arm or whatever. So I said, oh, man, windstorm. So what I consider in wrestling, the worst thing that's going to happen is I'm going to lose, which is what they should have been thinking anyways in wrestling. Is the worst thing that happens is I lose, no big deal. It's not such a big deal. So now it's like, I just get to go wrestle a match. Not a big deal, So it's like, that would be the thing in mixed martial arts that I think a lot of people consider to be tougher.
I want to transition into the world of crypto, which I'm sure you've noticed your portfolio started to recover a little bit. I mean, it was already,
I knew it and didn't sell shit.
Yeah, I haven't sold shit either. Can you give people the lay of the land of where you think crypto is going in the next year or so?
Yeah. I read a really funny tweet maybe a day ago, and they said, people say there may be a chance that Bitcoin goes to zero, which I think it's unlikely, but I'll give it to them.
Sure.
But there's almost a guarantee fiat goes to zero.
Almost a guarantee.
There is. So if you look at the historical context of fiat currencies, which are, for those people who don't know fiat, you can Google it, or you could say it's money issued by the government. The average length of time that a fiat currency lasts is 27 years. Okay. And they all, or not all, we have a few left, but pretty much they've all went to zero over the course of time.
Now, in the modern world, there's exceptions to that rule, like the yen.
It just hasn't happened yet.
But the U.S.
Yen's going to zero. Are you kidding me? It's almost at damn zero already.
Because of the real estate crash, or what? What's the
yuan or the yen? Because the Japanese yen is getting murdered. It's absolutely getting murdered. It's going to go to zero.
What's China's primary currency?
That's the yuan.
And is that going to zero, you think?
Probably in time. Yes. But the dollar's going to go to zero. We're $34 trillion in debt. Do you really think the government has a plan to pay that off?
They've definitely been doing a really good financial job in the last few decades. So I think, yeah, of course. I'm just kidding.
You're joking. You're joking. Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah. There's at this point, there's not really any way that the United States government can pay off their debt. So it is in fact going to spiral out of control, and then they have to just. What they're going to do is they're going to keep printing more money for a while to keep it going down the road, and then.
But it's just delaying the inevitable.
It's just delaying the inevitable, because you get to 50 trillion, 60 trillion, 70 trillion, and all of a sudden, you literally can't service your debt, I mean, it's probably not that far away where they can't service their debt. So that means they literally can't even make the payments on the debt that they have because they can't raise enough revenue from taxes.
So do you think the only logical outcome is that they have to default and that
Yes.
they're going to have to adopt cryptocurrency because it's their ability to wipe the
Well,
slate clean?
Well, I don't know if they'll adopt crypto or if they'll start over. I mean, I would actually assume they start over with some type of other fiat currency, which other countries have done this, right? They'd say, boom, this is gone. We're starting over at zero. But then it's like, to issue dollars, the government has to issue debt. But then if you just told everyone to get lost, that we're not paying back our debt to you, why would anyone buy new debt? Right? So if the government right now has, what, $34 trillion in debt, so there's $34 trillion of bonds out there that the United States government owes people. Well, if they said, all right, we're not paying that, we're going to zero, we have no more debt, and we're going to start over again. Well, if you had bought $1 million of U.S. debt, why are you going to buy more? Because why can't they just wipe it clean again?
There's no incentive for people to get behind the new currency
Yeah.
because we already saw you default on this one.
Correct, yes.
So you think that the tides of the populism of, let's say, Bitcoin will win over whatever the new government solution is?
Well, I think Bitcoin is the first. I mean, gold has been great, right, to this point in time where you actually have to do work to get it, right? Can't just be a government that says, oh, we have 1 million new pounds of gold. They can't do that, right? They have to go. It has to be dug out of the ground. But that's what Bitcoin is for the digital realm. Is there's only 21 million. No government can say, oh, you know what? We just found another 21 million. There's actually 42 million now. Like, it can't happen, right? So you have the first fair source of money, fair source of digital money in human history. Everything gold does, Bitcoin does better than gold did. So I think anyone who wants sound money or who's interested in sound money is going to go to Bitcoin. And within the United States of America, we have not had hyperinflationary events. We haven't even had really strong inflation. We're kind of starting. And so I think a lot of Americans don't see the need for it because they felt so good in the U.S. dollar. And even when you compare the U.S. dollar to other currencies, like the Turkish lira, for example, I was there in August with Aidan Sinclair, it has inflated 100% year over year. So, Tommy, if you had $1 million in savings last year, you worked hard your whole life, you were smart, you were wise, you saved your money, you had $1 million in the bank. 1 year later, you only have 500,000. Like that's devastating. It's devastating. It's theft, right? It's theft from the government to the people. And this is where once that starts happening to people, you say, shit, how do I check out of this? Like, I didn't agree to this. I was wise. I saved money. I had $1 million, and now I only have $500,000. And the next year you only have 250,000. And the next year you'll have.
And on top of that, they're taxing you 30+% on what you bring in, which seems obscene to me.
So you've already paid taxes working into that, and now they're inflating what you've your hard saved money. They're inflating that away. So I think, and right, this is all across Europe. This is Japan. This is America right now. We're in these periods where we have these huge, gigantic debts. Like the debt to GDP is at all-time highs. So yeah, I think more and more people will start figuring out. So the next halving for Bitcoin is 5 months away.
Usually there's a bit of a run leading up to that.
Tiny little bit leading up to it, but then it's 18 months post-halving that's usually a boom.
Do you think we're about to enter into another period of crypto prosperity?
Correct, yes. So, and we have this ETF coming up, so that'll bring like institutional money. Although if I were recommending, I would say buy your own Bitcoin and hold your own Bitcoin. And that's the other thing from a freedom component. Americans haven't had felt this because we've actually have been free. Hopefully we continue to be free, but I don't know that I want to make that a guarantee at this point in time. But, if I want to transact with you, I don't need anyone else with Bitcoin. I can send Bitcoin directly to you. There doesn't need to be a third-party intermediary. And if it's $1, I need the bank to give me permission to send the dollar to you.
Your own money.
My own money. I need the bank to give me permission to send something to you, right? I need a third party in the middle. So if you've been in a country like Iran or China or one of these other countries with totalitarian regimes, and you want to send money to your relatives or they want to send money back to you, they can't send it directly to you, right? They have to send it through like a Western Union or they have to send it through a third party, and the Chinese government might say, well, nah, we don't really, right, they're already doing social credit scores. Tommy says some wild shit on YouTube. You can't send money to him. Nope. don't think so, right? So Bitcoin also gives you the freedom to have the ability to transact person to person, which is
That's as American as it gets.
it's America's getting. And that son of a bitch, Elizabeth Warren, she wants to cancel that. She's like the worst. There's no way she's that stupid. She's just being disingenuous and lying. Like, did you see the one they just lied about? They said a huge amount of cryptocurrency funded Hamas. Did you see this?
I mean, I sent a little bit of Bitcoin to Hamas, but
And it was but the number was like 100x what the number she said was like 100x what it really was, because with Bitcoin everything's on chain. So you may not know the address, you can see all the money moving, right?
But the thing about that argument that's ridiculous is how much of the U.S. dollar is spent on black market activities already.
Yeah. And like, who is it? Goldman Sachs paid what, a $5 billion fine for Jeffrey Epstein's banking. So like, they didn't have an issue with what he was doing at an American bank in dollars. Like, Bitcoin is actually more clearly transactional, because every Bitcoin transaction you can literally see, right? Because the node, if you operate a node, you can see every transaction that's happening all around the world. Whereas a dollar, if I go get millions of dollars, they can't tell if I give $20 to you. No one knows that, right? Which is actually why they're trying to do a cashless society, because they want to watch you. And then the scary thing that's coming is the CBDCs, that's central bank digital currency. It will be the same thing. It'll just replace the dollar, but they just want to watch your ass because they don't know who you're giving money to.
So how do we stop that from happening? Because when the fork in the road comes and they want us, the dollar has failed, they want us to transition to their own homemade, government-made currency that's intrusive and anti-freedom. How do we resist that?
Hopefully enough people wake up by then, and if they don't, I might be going somewhere else.
Where would be a top option?
Well, right now El Salvador is the Bitcoin capital of the world, right? Because they made Bitcoin a reserve currency. So
that president's doing some remarkable stuff. Have you seen how they're rounding up all the gang members there?
It's pretty amazing what he's doing. So
one of the most dangerous countries in Central America, or the most dangerous, to now the safest.
Yes, it's amazing.
It's interesting when you have a little bit of law and order, what can happen in the city, huh?
It really is, yes. And you're going to San Francisco, so you can find out about the opposite way when you lack law and order, when you refuse to arrest real criminals, what happens. And man, it's kind of scary. I was just telling my wife about, I'm actually taking my daughter to New York City, but now in New York City, they've had numerous incidents in the past 3 months. Daniel Penny was one, where the one guy was harassing people on the subway, and the bystander choked him out and he ended up dying. And then the bystander's going to jail. Most recently,
the bystander was a good guy in that situation?
Was the good guy, yes.
But went too far with his force?
Maybe I think it was, but I believe the guy was actually assaulting people. So then it's like,
it's the gloves off against criminals that's so, like, I can't wrap my head around it. Like the fact that a guy can just walk into a store, steal $1,000 worth of stuff in San Francisco, no one cares, or the fact that he has a gun, he's busting out your car windows in front of you, talking shit to you. There's videos that I've seen of this.
Yes.
If you were to pop him, you'd be the guy that they'd.
Yes.
I don't get it.
It's so crazy. Well, I mean, obviously, if you want to, and I can't prove any of these things, right? This is where I'd be a conspiracy theorist, but a lot of times conspiracy theorists are right. Is like, well, the Soros DAs, right? They don't have to rewrite the law. They just have to enforce the law in a certain manner, which can enable criminals to do criminal activities and not be punished. And then what essentially you do is you destabilize as a society.
But
right?
Who gains by that? Because I always say follow the dollar, right?
Follow the dollar, yes.
If we're not making money because our society has collapsed, how do the elites benefit from it being ran by criminals?
I would say, what I would say is that, and because California is probably the most obvious example, is when you get so many people on welfare, right? I mean, in California, the proportion of people on government has some type of government assistance. Well, if you can get them on government assistance, they're likely going to vote for the people who maintain the government assistance, not the people who are going to take off the government assistance, right? So if you get enough on government assistance, then you're going to maintain control.
You get 51% of the population on the government tit, and they're never getting off.
Never getting off. So I would guess that's why. But I don't have all the answers, but some things you just look at and you say, well, that just doesn't add up. Like, why is this happening? It shouldn't be happening. And maybe I don't know the final ulterior motive of the perpetrator, but that doesn't mean the fact that I can't see that something's happening.
Something's amok.
Yes.
Fellas, how are we doing on time right now? What time is it? Okay.
Oh, baby.
Yes. Okay, so let's talk about this. I have a baby boy on the way. Gonna
You
be
do?
yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Gonna be due in January,
Okay.
God willing. And I'm wondering, what advice you have for me as a father?
Oh, it's a good question. Well, I have 3 kids, 10, 6, and 5. So I'm 10, 8, and 5. Um, it's been great. My wife's a really good mom. Give her compliments for that all the time. Man, it's so much fun to be a parent. I guess the biggest one would be like live the way you want to try to teach them to live, because that's an obvious one, but a lot of people lack the discipline to do so. So if you probably from a mental capacity understand like what the best way to live is, like say being honest, being disciplined in your diet, working out every day, like these obvious things, right? Um, but then there's a lot of people who they're not disciplined enough to live that way, and so even if you tell your kid to live that way, but they see you living a different way, the likelihood that they live the way you talk versus the way you live is that's going to be skewed in their mind.
How do you build kids that are tough and strong and independent? And second part of that question is, what is your philosophy on screen time?
Screen time. So none of my kids have a phone. We're probably not giving them phones till 8th grade. We think their phones are bad.
That seems like a reasonable age, but I'm guessing they're already having pushback.
No, my kids are not. But a lot of kids have phones. Like my daughter's in 5th grade, my oldest one, and a lot of kids have phones at that age, and we think no good. And my wife's really pushing. I mean, she's very strong on the issue, and I agree with her generally. So our kids can have the iPads on weekends only, or car trips because they're so annoying in the car, right? So we only have one TV upstairs, so we make them share the TV if not on a weekend, and yeah, we don't let them sit and watch the TV all day. But that's another where it's like it's much easier to do that, right? To get your own parent time to say, hey, go watch the TV or whatever, and maybe if we were both really busy doing work or something, and they have a day off school, we would maybe let them watch longer than normal. But yeah, I think screen time's probably. There'll probably be a lot of research that comes out on that in a few years, but I think it's probably really bad for kids. Social media is very bad for kids, obviously. So we'll probably try to hold that one this long. I don't know if we can get to 18, but we might try.
Are your kids readers?
Yes. Yep.
And was that another thing that they just learned by watching you?
My wife tries to read with them. I mean, still to this day, tries to read with the younger two every night, and then the older one reads by herself. And yes, I mean, obviously, I have a library downstairs, and I read a lot, so they see me doing it. From a toughness standpoint, I don't know that I mean, they're tougher than most kids. I don't know if I'd qualify them as tough yet.
If I saw your kids walking down an alley at night and it was just me, I think I'd run the other way.
So I think one thing I proposed to my wife, and this is probably coming soon because now they're getting older, where it's actually possible, like some type of tough hiking challenge where it's tough on us too, where we go 15 or 20 miles or something that's just hard, right? So you do hard things because to the point I made earlier, yeah, once you like work your discipline or you work your toughness, you do get tougher and more disciplined. And then the next thing's like, well, that's not as hard because I already did this hard thing, and you're not as scared of it. So I think that's probably something we'll do. My oldest, really enjoys wrestling at this point, so hopefully that keeps up, and I'm sure that'll make her really tough.
Now, is that something that you brought them to practice? Hey, you're going to check this out, or you wait till they asked you? How did you introduce your own kids to wrestling?
No, all the kids do wrestling. And they do all sports. So all of our kids do all sports, right? One per season, I guess you'd say. And the deal is they do it till they're 10, and then they can choose whatever. If they want to stop something, they can stop something. They will need to participate in something. So like my middle daughter, she really likes theater or whatever. So we've already enrolled her like in an improv class, and we'll probably do other things as well. But my oldest, she's still at age 10, she still wants to participate in soccer, gymnastics, and wrestling, and almost too much. Almost like, well, you need to pull back on something because you can't be doing so much,
So if they were age 8 or 9 and they said, I hate wrestling,
yeah,
Dad,
Andy does.
what would you do?
Well, Andy's like, I can't wait till I'm 10. I don't like wrestling.
So no matter what, she's going till she's 10.
Yeah, and you know what? When you're disciplined enough and you're like, well, you're going to do it till you're 10. They kind of give. I told my brother this the other day. It's like, you'll have. I remember having this one battle with Alex, my oldest, when she was 1.5, and I don't remember what the battle was over, but there was something that she wanted to do that she shouldn't have been doing, And I'm like, no, you're not going to do it. And then, they cry and throw a fit. And then so a lot of parents, discipline and toughness, they're like, this sucks. I'd rather go play on my phone or do something than listen to this damn baby cry and scream and whatever. I'll let her have whatever she wants, But it was like, no. And, when they're headstrong, like Al, I think she cried for a freaking, I don't know, hour and a half, and she wanted whatever. I don't remember what it was now. I remember specifically where we were, 'cause I was doing a wrestling camp in Eau Claire for Jordy Kraus, and we had been in this Airbnb, and I'm like, no. And so, I said to keep saying no for an hour and a half, and then eventually she gave up. And once they realized that they're going to give up before you are, that's just settled for life. Like, I might as well not keep pushing, because I'm going to give up before he does.
So having firm boundaries.
Yes, absolutely. So it's like, there's never been like, oh, well, you can maybe quit, where she had a glimmer of hope. It's like, no, you're doing this till you're 10. And when you're 10, if you choose to, you can quit. And that's it. Like that. Yeah. And so, my wife's very firm on, you're going to get a phone in 8th grade, and you're not going to get one prior to then. And that's it.
Ben, I love the way you think about the world, your mindset. I guess for the last bit here, there's a lot of people out here that are feeling lost, or they're struggling, or they don't know their place in the world. Can you look at the camera and tell them a little bit of a message?
A mess? Oh, that's a tough one. You know what I just read that would be a great read for them? I read this with some of my athletes. It's Chop Wood, Carry Water. Have you read it?
Mm-mm.
You need to read it. Tommy, might inspire you. But I actually just pulled a bunch of good quotes out of there. And the one I've been using with my athletes a lot lately is, greatness isn't for the chosen few, greatness is for the few to choose. And so if we want to be great, and this is what the book's about, it's not like I'm going to be great for a month and then I'm going to be great. It's greatness is a pursuit of something I'm going to do over a very long period of time through a whole bunch of really small actions. And so I need to live that way. That is the way I live my life, is in pursuit of this thing. And I'm not going to take a shortcut. I'm not going to get there faster than I think. I'm just going to keep grinding until I get what I want. So I think people need to find something they're passionate about, that they want to pursue, and then realize it's going to take a really, really, really long time to get what you want in life, and be willing to put the work in. And then the last one, can I find my phone? Oh, hold on. My phone's right over there. I'm going to grab it. Because
this guy was just talking about screen time, and here he is trying to TikTok on the episode.
I actually don't TikTok. That's Chinese spyware. I don't mess with that. So one of my athletes actually brought this quote up. So what we do with I have a small group of athletes, multiple small groups, but I have a group of 6 or 8. And I'll say, okay, here's the chapters you have to read. And then after you read these chapters,
you assign your wrestlers chapters and books.
In these small groups.
I love it.
We're going to read these chapters. And then, I'm going to call on each one of you, and you're going to bring up a topic that happened within that series of chapters. And we're going to discuss, meaning, what we thought it meant in the book, and then what we thought it means for you, and then what we think it means for wrestling. And then one of my athletes, I don't know why I didn't pick up on this quote, because it's such a great quote. I got 24 messages while we're doing this damn podcast. Let me find this quote. I promise it's gonna be worth the wait. It's gonna be a really good one. Okay, ready? So he said, I'll read this to you, Tommy, and you're gonna remember this the rest of your life. On your deathbed, you will regret the mountains you chose not to climb. You won't regret the bumps, bruises, broken bones, and scars you got from the ones you did climb. So, go and attack life.
Folks, it's remarkable what your life can become when you dedicate yourself to a pursuit. And I think both of us are living proof that if it's a pursuit that you love, good things will happen. And I've enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
I'll see you guys next week. Peace.